Hey, Andrew, how you going?
Very good. Very, very good.
Good. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
No, all good, James. Great to chatting to you again.
I'll just give it a few minutes.
All good.
Oh, seem to have lost you there, Andrew.
Can you hear me now? You got me back?
I can hear you. I've lost you in terms of the video.
Let me on full screen now.
Yeah, it's just a black screen on my end. The joys of technology.
How's that?
Yep, you're back. I think it just might be on my end. We should be all good.
All good. All right.
I'll just give it a few minutes. Just let everyone. I think everyone's jumping in now.
Yeah. All good. Nick is getting an echo.
Yeah. Does it sound all right on your end, Andrew? Or
Yep, like not picking up an echo. I can just try dropping out of the AirPods and just use see what happens. Maybe the Can you hear me now, James?
yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Nick, are you still getting an echo? I'm getting someone else text me saying the sound is good on their end. So
Right.
Technology never works when you want it to.
Yeah. Tell me about it. Someone's mic is picking up output. Maybe I'll just disconnect my just go off the MacBook speakers. Is that better, Nick? Can you still hear me, Andrew?
Yeah, loud and clear.
I've just turned my mic off.
Fix.
There we go. That'll be the mic. All right, well, look, it's 11, so let's kick this off. Cool. So look, good morning and thank you all for finding the time and visiting today's webinar. For those that do not know me, my name is James Gilden. I'm the co-founder of Latitude IT, digital IT and recruitment company based in Sydney and Melbourne. We're pleased to welcome you to the first Latitude Live webinar series, where we'll be taking a deep dive into the world of innovation. I guess we've just done this a second ago, but if everyone can just tick on the poll and just let me know if you can hear us. It's the first time we've used, I guess, this platform, so any feedback would be appreciated. I'm pleased to shortly introduce and welcome our co-host, Andrew Deville. But just, I guess, a few kind of ground rules. Any questions you've got during the presentation, please just write them in the chat and we'll come back to them at the end. We'll dedicate a kind of 10-minute Q&A session at the end that we can obviously run through as many questions as we get. Any relevant links and docs and a copy of the recording of the webinar we will include and send that to you as well. Great. So look, I think we're ready to kick off. So I guess, look, what spurred this topic on? Look, obviously pre-COVID, innovation was quite healthy across the financial sector, retail, banking, and I guess startups in general. Generally got a lot of funding, projects were getting the green light. COVID hit, which has impacted everyone. But I guess from an innovation perspective, it's been quite interesting, I guess, time in the market. Companies have had to pivot and adapt and move faster than ever before. You look at the retail sector, have certainly had to pivot and change in order to survive and to obviously serve their customers. We've seen products that have been spun up and built that typically, would have taken months to get signed off, at least. On the flip side, I guess I've lost count how many number of posts I've seen on LinkedIn of new startups through accelerator programs that are starting to sort of come to market. We've certainly starting to see that kind of side hustle entrepreneur taking the plunge on their big idea. So I think it's safe to say that we're kind of on this beginning of an innovation boom, which I guess is a great segue into today's webinar. Innovation, the most overused word, but what does it actually mean? Today's co-host is Andrew Deville. He's a strategic designer, innovation leader, and I guess has studied this in great detail, both locally and overseas. He's someone that has worked in some major companies, sitting in innovation teams. He's consulted to multiple startups across the globe. And Andrew and I have spent countless hours on the phone talking around innovation and new growth and what does it actually mean. So Andrew, mate, thanks for taking the time out to do this webinar. So look, what got you into this space?
Yeah, James, thanks very much for having me. It's good to be chatting with you again. And I hope everyone's well and safe who's listening in. So yeah, what got me into the space? Well, I've been back in Australia now since early 2011. I was living in Europe at the time, coming on the back of at the time. Came back into Australia and started working within the design innovation community, and kind of design thinking was kind of taking off in Australia at that time, and so was early stage kind of innovation, new growth. We started to see some early incubators inside of companies. Customer experience was also really picking up pace. Customer experience teams, customer experience strategies. But one thing I saw, and I was a victim of this, a few times. Is that design teams got spun up, innovation teams got spun up, and then within 12 to 18 months, 24 months, they just completely got wiped out again. And this was repetitively happening over time and time again, and it still happens today. And I wanted to, understand why, like what was actually going on, what was actually causing this. So kind of from mid to late 2011, and I started to, see these teams and these individuals, not really succeeding, I started to interview CEOs, MDs, heads of, managers, practitioners from a whole range of companies and industries, primarily in Australia with a few overseas as well. And what emerged out of that took about 18 months to kind of do a lot of those interviews. There emerged a whole set of capabilities that many of the problems, or all of the problems, could actually slot into. And there were 12 capabilities in total. And with these insights and learnings, I asked a new question, which kind of set me on this 6-year pathway, and I'm still on it today. Which I could design a company from scratch with all this new information, then what would that look like? Because it was very clear that companies aren't set up to create environments which foster and support this innovative way of thinking, this innovative way of behaving, and this innovative way of doing. And I've been in spaces where you can't even play music. It was, you looked down upon if you didn't have a suit and tie on, that type of thing. And so innovators and designers and strategic thinkers, they kind of think differently, behave differently, dress differently, and talk differently. So the spaces really just weren't set up, and it wasn't just the space; it was the company as well. So I kind of set about seeing, with all these problems and these capabilities, what were the current solutions in the marketplace? What were companies doing about these problems? And then came up with a set of solutions of my own. And then pretty much I've spent the last 6 years working on projects and within companies, agencies, management consulting firms, to really to test a lot of these solutions. And they've been continually validated over the last 2 or 3 years. And I've come to a point now where I've been able to successfully kind of bring all of these 12 capabilities together in what I call a system of innovation. And now I work with companies to establish this system of innovation with the 12 capabilities. And even now at a point, where we're starting to actually look at building, platform software to then actually support this system of innovation. So, it's having a really, I thought, negative effect on the design and innovation community, and it's something that I care passionately about. This is just my way of trying designers, managers, executives really just grapple with this big word innovation, and making sure that they drive value for their customer, but also for the employee and also for the business. We don't need to see teams continually fail. We don't need to see millions of dollars just being, thrown at this word innovation and not seeing much return for it. And innovation's hard, right? If it was easy, we would all be doing it and would all have, billion-dollar startups. But the reality is, if looking at the market and trying to identify customer needs and opportunities is hard, and even more so is then executing on that. So yeah.
Okay, so I guess innovation, look, from my end, I hear this word every single day from clients and candidates. Every company wants to be at the forefront of innovation, yet innovation teams that they tend to put together don't always stand the test of time, and kind of, startups kind of supersede them. I guess the question is, why, and where is it broken? Is it kind of unrealistic expectations from the board? Is it kind of the structure and the process they have in place? And I guess why and how can smaller startups drive innovation without the headaches? So I guess why and how is innovation kind of failing?
Yeah, that's a big question, and I could we all could kind of talk about this for days, weeks, and months. But at least from the research that I've been doing over the last 6 years and talking with, from board CEOs to practitioners to frontline employees, first we need to understand when we say the word innovation initiatives and we say why they're failing. I think we probably just need to get onto the same page in terms of what we actually mean by that. So is to be able to have the ability to innovate, or as I call it, building that system of innovation. And I call it a system because the system is made up of these 12 capabilities, which all work together to encourage ideas, identify, share, review, prioritize, resource. So everyone in the company has the ability, to design and deliver genuine customer and business outcomes. Innovation is not a team. Innovation is not a department. Innovation is a skill. It's a capability in itself. And everyone has a role to play in improving the business and improving the customer. So the word innovation I find is used to describe what we are going to do. And it very rarely describes or defines how we're going to go about innovating. So if you ask most people in an organization, whoever owns the innovation, torch or design torch or change torch, and saying, what's your innovation strategy? Most of the time they give you we've got these 5 things that we're working on. It's usually the output that they talk about, but it's like, no, but what's the strategy? What's the plan to activate your employees and to get ideas and opportunities from a post-it note all the way through the organization and back out into market? So why are they failing? The 12 capabilities part exist or don't exist, and they don't really have an innovation strategy. They've hired some designers, they've brought in a design agency, and they're trying to look for a problem to solve. Well, that's just a very small piece of the puzzle.
Sure. You mentioned these 12 capabilities. What are they specifically?
Yeah, sure. So vision and having a customer vision and customer strategy is one. It sounds really obvious, but there are quite a few companies out there who don't actually have this. An end-to-end way of working. So, we have this quite defined in many organizations from a delivery perspective. We've got Agile, which is very much up and running in a lot of organizations, but the front of the organization really doesn't have an end-to-end way of working, which is strategy and design to then plug into delivery. So how do we go from, I've got an idea on a post-it note, or frontline see a problem? How does that come to life in an organization and then traverse through the organization back out into market? That's what I mean by end-to-end way of working. How do we measure the decisions that we make within an organization? Transparency is vitally important. So transparency is the story. So what do we do really, really well as an organization? And also what don't we do too well in the market as an organization? Transparency of insights, transparency of actions. There's a lot of hidden projects around organizations, and transparency of outcomes. Hey, we've been working on this thing for 6 months. We put it into the market. What were the outcomes? Physical spaces is the 5th one. So you can't innovate at your desk. You need a physical space. You need big walls. Because you need to visualize, your research, you need to visualize your design, you need to bring people into the physical space, you need to be prototyping, and that takes room. Number 6, methodologies. You need to pick the methodology that you're going to be using to design. Design thinking, lean startup, jobs to be done, a hybrid of that. It's irrelevant. You need tools to then track opportunity and bring decision making to the forefront and unify your decision making. Understand what questions need to be asked as this, again, idea opportunity flows through the organization. Resourcing. You need resourcing to actually make this happen, and that's not just design resource as well. What I found quite interesting is that I couldn't really find anyone in an organization whose job it was to actually design the organization. So the organization is constantly changing and evolving, but it didn't seem it was being done in a very deliberate or purposeful way. So when we say resourcing, having an innovation capability requires to change the organization and people. If you don't have people full-time on this, then, again, funding, opportunities, initiatives need money. We need to move from budget models to funding models. Reward and recognition, and I don't mean traditional reward and recognition. This is not about money. This is about how to reward and recognize people who actually take risk and actually prototype and actually fail and learn on behalf of the organization and the customer. We need to recognize and reward and protect these types of behaviors. Insights and analytics, quantum qual. We've got a lot of insights and data flowing through organizations. Most of the organizations I've worked with, there's on average 30 different sources of information which inform decision making. Some of it doesn't correlate with each other. It's in packs, it's spread out all over the place. And number 12 is behaviors, which is behaviors of employees, the business and leadership. There are very different behaviors that need to be exhibited by individuals. So a lot of companies have them. About changing them, it doesn't take that much to actually get them to actually all work together. But yeah, they're the 12.
Okay. And do you need all the 12? Do companies need to have every single 12 in order to be successful, or what's the?
Well, most of them have them. When I say reward and recognition, we've had a reward and recognition program for the last 15 years. Okay, that's great, but is the reward and recognition, does it work in the context of innovation? So a lot of companies do have these anyway. It's just that they're not designed to work together, and particularly in the context of innovation. So Scott Anthony, Managing Director at Insight, had a HBR article in 2014, which says a minimal viable innovation system will ensure that good ideas are encouraged, identified, shared, reviewed, prioritized, resource developed, rewarded. The S stands for system. You can't pick and choose between the elements, do everything or do nothing. And what he's talking about there are these 12 capabilities, or at least in his article, he has slightly lesser capabilities, but he's talking about a system. All of these things need to actually work together. And we've seen time and time again, I've seen banks spin up design and innovation teams. Great, we've got spaces. Great, we've got design resource. We've picked a methodology. Let's go. Well, it's like, well, hang on. You haven't sorted out your decision making. You haven't sorted out funding, and you've got insights and analytics spread all over the place. And we see these teams just collapse over time. Not all the capabilities. Some companies don't have all of these capabilities, but the important thing here is that they need to be designed to change many of these in a drastic way to actually start to seeing really phenomenal change and impact within the organization and within teams. Often there isn't a clear understanding and leadership alignment as to what type of innovation companies want to do. So, let's just keep it really simple. We've got two types of innovation, right? We've got improving existing product, services, processes, and systems. And we've got number two, which is explore new product services for new segments and markets, which typically involve new business models. So the inability to change fast enough is predominantly the problem that's coming out here. And we can't change because all of these things, all of these capabilities are all happening in isolation of each other, and they're just not allowing us teams to move at a pace that they naturally need to be able to move at.
So I guess we're talking about innovation. I think change seems to be the kind of byproduct here. How do you work with companies to change? Like what do you do?
Yeah, change is really hard for a lot of people and a lot of organizations, and it's personal. Our people's lives are attached to their role, right? People's lives are attached to their salary. So when you ask people to change, you do get pushback. So part of the change process is about the organization and leadership creating a safe space for people to actually relearn and to change. So organizations that I've worked with in the past, they might remove the performance metrics and bonus reviews, for 12 months to allow this change to take this pressure off. But alignment and understanding what change means in the context of innovation and looking at this word another way to evoke kind of new line of discussion, thinking, and behavior. Jack Welch, famously said, if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, then the end is near. Okay, now we are when I came back in Australia early 2011, it was on the back of the GFC, radical change in the market, really, really significant change. We are now at a point globally where the pace of change on the outside has superseded the change inside. A lot of companies are failing, and every company now has to think about their business strategy, their business model, their product and service strategy, and what value they're actually now driving into the market and to their customers, because it's all changed. So change is huge, and the speed of change is very important. One of the change hierarchy to kind of help aid this conversation. So when you think about change, the question you got to ask is, what is changing, and who are the owners of change in an organization, and what solutions can we put in place to achieve the desired outcome? So I use this model quite a bit. So at the top, we've got the business model. Then we've got down under this, we've got a service model. Then we've got the services or the service experience. Then we've got the products that our customers use. And then we've got the interactions that a customer has with the business. And this is from telephone calls, this is documentation, it's emails, it's apps, it's websites, it's store visits, it's all this type of stuff. Now, design as a discipline plays an important role in innovation, but it is important to recognize and understand that it's just part of a set of the 12 capabilities. The word design hierarchy, you see business model design, service model design, service design, product design, interaction design. So we can see why design as a community might seem to mean the dominant language and the dominant kind of focus in trying to build innovation, but it's not. And as a design practitioner, it's not easy for me to say that, but it's not. It's only one of 12. Now the interesting thing here is with this model, we can then start to have many different types of conversation. Data sits across all of this. Insight sits across all of this. Well, who owns interaction data? Well, typically a digital team or a call center team, but who typically owns then service model, business model data? Well, that's kind of analytics teams and strategy teams. You may have a problem with, an interaction with an app. You might have the best designers, but if there's a problem with service design, or the service model, then teams need to be able to traverse through this, through the business to solve problems and impact design. Now, depending on how an organization is structured, depending on how collaborative they are, depending on how free-flowing people are to move around the organization to change things, which in most organizations is not. There's barriers, there's blockers. It's like, don't come into my turf. I'm digital, I own digital. It's like, you just stay over there. So we've got change happening so much over the organizations, but we've quarantined it, and we need to free it up. And if we don't do this, then organizations simply just aren't going to be able to change fast enough. And I think we're seeing definitely the side effects now with isolation and the world changing. It's like companies are going to be forced to do it. If they're not, they're just not going to be here.
For sure. And look, I guess from my end, I see this every day. We've got all these different kind of teams. Do we, like product design, engineering, is there a need to have a separate, I guess, innovation team? How does that look? For me, I think innovation blankets an organization, but yet we still have these kind of innovation labs or innovation arms. Is there a need?
Yeah, it depends on, look, there's no right and wrong answer here. You can start your innovation journey in many different places. You can bring in a SWAT team and, highly skilled, highly specialized, and they kind of, demonstrate, the value of innovation and show the returns, and the business goes, hey, that stuff actually works. Like, now let's try and scale it. Customer experience takes a different approach. So there's no right and wrong answer. I think critical, what's important to build into any resource structure is the ability to allow your workforce to freely collaborate together, to share experiences, insights, skills, expertise, knowledge, and effort. So I'm nearly not wedded to kind of any structure in particular. You've got more modern day, structures like holacracy, where it's a flat organization. Everyone just automatically groups together to solve problems. When they're solved, they all disappear and then pick up new problems. And I think there's, again, just drawing on some thought leadership in the industry. Roger Martin, who's the Dean of Rotherham School of Management at the University of Toronto and Professor of Strategic Management, in a book with AJ Lafferty, Playing to Win, differentiation lies in what you do for your customers each and every single day. It is embodied in the routines and processes that people throughout your organization follow. Value creation today depends on knowing as much as you can about the people you serve. Every member of your organization having a first-hand sense of what people need and how your organization addresses those needs and how they as individuals can add value. In that statement right there is pretty much many of the answers to innovation. It's a process, it's built in with routines, it's about knowing your organization, that's your insight capability, your process is your end-to-end way of working. People having a sense of what people need, that sharing of the information and how they're going to address those. There's like the methodologies, how are we actually going to go about solving them? But it's everyone's role because there are problems everywhere that companies need to continually change. They're not just happening in small pockets where little SWAT teams can go in. So we need to build innovation literally as a capability, not as a team.
Okay. You mentioned, I guess, decision making a bit. What do you mean, and how important is it?
Decision making. A big one. Just before we go forward, one of the things, I wanted just to backtrack a bit. So one of the things that companies need is to establish a change platform.
Right.
A lot of almost most organizations, create a change program or an innovation program or an innovation initiative, which has a start and an end. Okay, and we go. But what we actually need is an actual platform that the entire organization uses, not just a team uses or a division uses. So here we can see this change platform or this system view approach, which has all of these 12 capabilities and how they all hang and sit together. Now, the problem is that many of these don't have really well free-flowing, operating models. They're disjointed. It's almost like an industry itself. We're doing a lot of meetings. We're trying to, you hear this statement inside of big companies, we just like doing business with ourselves. A lot of them are relationship-based. I've been in organizations where, if you wanted to, kind of move ahead, you needed to kind of know people in the organization, because if you couldn't access individuals and to get them to work with you, it's like you didn't have a hope in hell to actually get anything done. I was like, really? You have a lot of ghost projects, high risk decision making, things aren't measurable. And this is not a blanket rule for everyone. Every company is different. Kind of bringing together, a lot of knowledge and insights collectively here. So my key point here is to build a change platform, not a change program. Think of it like, James, I'm going to send you on a journey. I'm going to give you a map as to how to get there. I'm going to give you a backpack, and it's going to have all these tools in it. I'm going to give you some support. So, it's a mobile phone. If you get into trouble and you need some help, just give us a call. But you're on your way. And so this is what we need to kind of do to a big part of employees in the company who are not necessarily focusing day to day in the operations, but are focusing in solving problems, is treat them, like these explorers. So we need to guide them support them, and inspire them and empower them to actually go forth and solve problems. And the only way we can do that if we have a platform for them to actually do that with.
Sure. So I guess that's kind of I guess this is where the sort of decision making sort of comes into play. Then, you mentioned obviously the decisions need to be made in order for innovation to kind of I guess drive or change to happen.
Yeah.
I guess so. How important is it? What?
Yeah. Like it's yeah. Look, first let's understand some context around decision making. There are two parts to decision making. First is the question, and second is the unit of measure that we're going to use to quantify whether the question has been answered correctly. So the problem I found with decision making, so yes, it's vitally important. You can't move this thing through an organization without effective decision making. It has to be transparent. We need to know what the questions are and how the business or business leadership are actually going to make a decision against these questions. How are they going to measure? So the problem I find with decision making in companies is that predominantly decision making is done behind closed doors. It's done in meeting rooms. It's done in pitch rooms, which I think needs to change. And when I've seen it change, when I've worked with companies to bring decision making into the public realm, into the organization, and when I mean public realm, I literally mean in a space, leadership standing together, making decisions around projects, transformation that actually happens, and the change within employees is phenomenal. So transparency is really big. Then there's alignment, in terms of what questions to ask. Again, as an idea traverses from an initial idea to a problem as it goes right into market, there's a whole series of questions that need to be asked. It blows my mind that a lot of the questions that we really should be asking of opportunities and initiatives just really aren't being asked. And secondly, we're not even really measuring them. So we can start to see how companies can let products and services out the door that really don't drive value for customers. And there's always that famous statistic that 75% of all ideas and businesses fail. It's like, well, why is that? It's because the decisions that we're making based on the information we've got isn't correct. So because of these problems, we see a lack of confidence by leadership to further invest in opportunities. And I've been a witness to this countless times, and I'm talking millions of dollars spent on looking for opportunities and almost getting to the finish line where we're not going to do any of those. I was like, why not? You've just spent all this money, and at least one reason that I see is just simply the confidence to kind of move forward.
Sure. So I guess on that note, so how do they make it work? What's the solution to kind of, I guess, getting it across the line?
So where I've seen this play out really well is when I'm working with companies, we bring the leadership team together and we jointly define all the questions that sit along the end-to-end way of working. There are various funding gates that are set up. There are steps and within that, depending on the methodology you choose as well. So we need to understand what the steps are, what the gates are, and then have all the questions predefined, pre-designed, and we understand how we're going to. Then we need to make those questions and those measurements public to everyone in the entire organization. And with these in place, teams and leaders are going to be 100% aligned on what to expect at each key decision gate. And then obviously the benefits are just saving huge amounts of time, stress, pain, frustration, and it frees up everyone to spend more time thinking about, whether the questions have been answered with enough rigor. Then you can start to put, you can really start to focus in on fine tuning and tightening the organization. So the questions don't need to necessarily have a lot of rigor in the beginning. if you're kind of doing innovation for the first time, you want to be somewhat loose to allow kind of margins of change and error. But as you get better, as you kind of build that innovation muscle, you can get quite tight with some of these units. So together, who are ultimately accountable and are in charge of making these decisions anyway. And run a workshop to understand what the stages are, the steps are, understand what the questions are going to be, and then give them to the very teams and people that are going to then be doing the work. So when they actually rock up, at a meeting or at a pitch session or at a budget meeting, they can say, hey, I've got this idea, I've done this research, I've spoken to X amount of companies, here's why it's good for the company, here's why it's good for the company. This idea is about making money or saving money. At the top of a napkin, I'm looking at another $10,000 to go and build a prototype to learn these things, can I do it? Like, if they're the questions and answers that everyone's expecting, then the dialogue moves away from springing questions on people to, well, let's talk about, when you actually spoke to customers, what did you hear? You're getting really, really deep into the data, to basically build confidence, because really what you want at the end of the funding cycle is for everyone in the room, which again I've experienced and I've been a part of, is going, yeah, why wouldn't we do this? Like, it's already been validated enough. It's like, yeah, let's just keep going. Like, come on. As opposed to what happens, the end almost seems to be a bit of a surprise. It's like, really? You want what? You want to do what? It's like, so you got to, with these funding gates and these questions, you're basically chopping up the decision into small parts. So it's not this big shock at the end. Definitely get everyone on board, get everyone together who are the decision makers, iron out what these questions are, how are you going to measure them? And just that alone is going to help you move and build a really healthy innovation capability inside your organization. And this is the same for teams. I'm working on building a new, these software platforms for the system of innovation, but I've got a series of questions. I need to know how to measure my success or the product success. And if I don't know this information, I'm just increasing my risk. And decision making is all about risk. Design is all about minimizing risks for organizations, or at least it is for one part.
Sure. And just how do like larger organizations, how do they just, I guess, do it faster? Like it always seems to take a lot longer. Obviously with COVID, we've seen retail brands spin up products that typically would have just taken forever. I safely say that they probably didn't have a system of innovation or a process in play, but it was almost like their hand was forced. But for me, it's great. It just goes to show that, hey, look, things can be done. Things can move very, very quickly if we need to. But I sometimes feel with kind of larger organizations, there's so much red tape. And then it's almost like, oh, we'll just get someone else in to build it. We'll outsource that risk. But, there's so many kind of, in my opinion, why that doesn't work, aside from losing all the IP and the knowledge, it's kind of, how do they move faster?
Well, it's interesting. What's clearly evident is that companies can move really quickly when they get out of the way of their employees. These capabilities are designed, to get the company out of the way and to allow, again, using that, that analogy of you climbing a mountain and you've got a map and a backpack. It's like, just get out of his way and just give him what he needs, and then let this individual, let this team kind of work it out. So we're seeing apps come out really quickly. Retail's spinning up a lot of new products really, really quickly. I think Bunnings released, a new app recently. So like, it can be done. We can get these products out and learn a lot quicker. We just got to get out of our way and stop doing business with ourselves. I haven't spoken to these organizations, but I'm sure that they all have these capabilities already there in play. They've just managed to get out of the way, of the red tapes. They've freed up people to talk and collaborate and share information, to access resource really, really quickly. So they're reprioritizing where they're placing their efforts. Big companies can do it. And I've recently worked with a major tier 1 financial services company, and yeah, we're seeing this rapid change and this rapid decision making. And when you have alignment, and when you get out of the way, and you have a platform in place, increase.
Cool. So look, Andrew, look, thanks again for your time. We're just going to kind of run through a few questions that have, I guess, just come over. One of them: how do you share new ideas if they do not have a system in place?
Yep. So yes, sounds like maybe it's a question from someone within an organization who
I'm assuming it's kind of, they don't sit within an innovation team, they're either at the front line. How do they kind of bring their ideas to life?
Look, bringing ideas to life, is in part about a good storytelling and good information. So, if you've got an idea, take the time to go and speak to the some customers, and that could be internal customers, by the way. But have some time to actually speak to the customer, and just to get some real information, or some frontline information. Really try and understand what it is that you're solving for. And you can search online, for pitch decks. I mean, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them that help you just kind of synchronize or synthesize your information into really nice sound bites. And tell a really powerful story about this problem you're solving from a customer's perspective, and then how us as an organization could solve that, and then what's the value. Okay, what's the value for the customer? So good, ideas, and a lot of companies have really good ideas, by the way. Every company I've worked with have phenomenal ideas, and they got buckets of them. It's about which one should you be focusing in on. So and that all then comes down to story and the quality of the information. So if you can do those two things, then pick the advocates in the business. Is that the CEO? Is it the MD? Is it who can bat for you? If you depending on where you are in that kind of tree structure in an organization, you want to try and get to a decision maker. So it could be having a coffee. It could be pick your moment, but pick your person. But you've got to be able to tell a really compelling story, and understand the value that's going to be created.
Yeah, and then I guess you would look for a sponsor within, whether that's a manager, to really then drive that idea, or
then your next hurdle is obviously being empowered. Again, this sounds like a question from an organization that probably doesn't have a platform in place, because if they did, they could take this idea, they'd know where to take it, they'd know what to do, and if it answered the questions that were asked, and they knew these questions, then they'd be able to move forward. But that question sounds like they don't have a place.
Yeah. And like for me, you see so many great ideas come out of kind of people that work within businesses, because they are at the kind of cold front.
Yep.
And it just gets lost, and then it's this whole kind of vicious circle of well, I guess that's where kind of new startups spin up, because they're solving a problem that they see day in, day out, and that's that kind of circle of I guess startups, right?
Yeah. Well, a good question that I ask, when I'm working, with companies is, if you had a really, really good idea, like one of those ideas that you think of, and you kind of recall it a week later, and it's still an epic idea. It's like, would you take that idea to your business, or would you quit your job and you do it yourself? If you have the way to test whether you've got a really good, healthy culture of innovation is if employees bring like epic ideas that they have to the business to actually work on. But what we find is that isn't the case, and a lot of people leave and then go and start up their own business, and then almost disrupt the very industry that they were working in. So, and there are some companies and countries that do this better than others in terms of fostering innovation. some companies, globally have, equity contracts where you can bring an idea, to, within the organization, and they'll actually allow you to work on it. The company get, equity within that, but they also give you the time to actually work in it, and you get a set period of time to actually do this. Google's got, the 10% time spent to work on your own thing, and wow, look how, I think, if someone drew a list of all the Google's ideas or products they've actually got and how many of them came out of 10% time, you'd be quite surprised.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So here we have, $1 trillion valuated company being built on 10% time. You give people a platform, you let them free. It's like they're going to create huge value, right? You've got to give them a piece of the pie.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess you need a platform for them to be able to kind of voice their ideas, right? Which is kind of this whole system of innovation, which all kind of makes sense. We just got a couple of other questions. You talked about funding. Many companies have, I guess, budgets. What's the main difference of the two? And
budgets and funding. So look, an innovation capability can work, either or with a budget model or a funding model. Budget model, classically, as we know, departments, divisions, allocated, each financial year, a capex, opex budget, which then they spend to, within that 12-month cycle. Funding models is where you take a lot of that money away and you compile it into a fund. Think of a venture capital and the funding gate, Series A, Series B, Series C, etc. And as we work on problems and ideas, as they flow through the organization. I didn't get that. Oops, sorry, that's Siri trying to listen in on a.
Everyone's listening.
Trying to get in on the act. You have to prove to the business through this series of questions that have already been designed by the leadership as to why they should give you $10,000 for the next idea. So that's the funding model where you're taking opportunities through a process, through an innovation cycle, and you're drawing down on money. And this exists, in a number of organizations as well. Again, big glass financial services company, have completely moved to this model. That's, I believe, the healthiest way. It's a simple trick to do on the organization to kind of change behavior. KPIs is another one. KPIs have to radically change, right?
Okay. One other question from Alison. What is the Showstopper innovation you've worked on, and how long did that take, and how did you measure it to be great from an ROI or success measure?
When you say Showstopper, you mean like a really epic idea that kind of...
Yeah, and I guess how you measure that.
Kind of radically failed.
Yeah, well, both.
Radically failed. Like I've been on projects where, early on, where I was, trying to, again, in the background, kind of learn about why innovation was failing. But look, I've worked on kind of 2 or 3 projects, which all follow the same kind of flow and worked out to be phenomenally successful in the Australian marketplace, and they're still in play today. And one of them is with St. George Bank, where they were wanting to do video conferencing. I was working with an epic team in a design agency at the time, and we, interviewing their customers, a single insight emerged, just one insight. And on the back of this one insight, we then prototyped a new service offering with a range of products built within that. We mocked up a branch out of Perspex and cardboard and cardboard printers, and we had frontline employees, and we had business specialists coming in to role play. We had customers, and we ran 4 days of just role playing this new service and product offering. And on the back of that, we received the funding then to go and deploy this, in a number of branches, and it went gangbusters, right? So what's interesting about that is in reflection, it's like what we were able to do is we were able to break down decision making and show the value both to the customer and to the company at all times. And then by the end of it, it's like, yeah, of course we're going to sink in $60 million to go and prove and demonstrate to the business that this thing is actually going to drive value. But first you need to understand what the word even means. Value for a business predominantly, means money, right? But value for a customer isn't about that. So through prototype and testing, through aligned decision making, through making micro decisions, projects can really big transformational projects like epic decision making, huge decision making can be done. And that was done, with George Freitas, the CEO of St. George.
And from a success point of view, like, how did he measure that? Because I think that's sometimes where, how do you measure that ROI in terms of kind of from a success point of view of that product within a innovation team?
There wasn't much measuring in terms of the success of innovation as a capability, because the project really wasn't about that. It was about, trying to deploy video conferencing within a financial services product and market. But the success was proof in the pudding. It's like, we have this idea, we have this concept, this service, this product offering, and we believe that we put it into the market in this way, it's going to move the needle for you. And we demonstrated that. Yeah. Like, we had, I think it was 12, if I can remember, customers and non-customers coming into this mock environment, and every single one of them changed their banking portfolio, their product portfolio, directly after just role-playing in a mock-up branch. The information they were receiving was genuine. They were act on this information. So even in a low fidelity prototype, we were able to see behavioral change from the customer and the type of change that we wanted to see. So you've got to be able to prove it. You've got to be able to prove that you can do the very thing that's on your job title. And this is what I say to any innovation team that gets set up. It's like, if you can't prove that you can do what you say on the tin in under 12 months, then you're not going to be around much longer. Yeah, you've got to be able to prove, as an industry, as a community, we have to be able to prove the very thing that we keep talking about. And if we can't,
and change, behavioral change is not easy, as we know.
It's not. It's highly personal, right? It's change. Yeah. As I said, people's lives are attached to their salary, to their bonuses, and which is fine. We live in a monetary world. But you've got to provide confidence and reassurance, and all the time to change. You need to remove some of those metrics, those KPIs, those performance things, to allow people to find their footing, find their language, find their rhythm, their cadence, their confidence, in that change. You can't just flick a switch and everyone, automatically has confidence. It just doesn't work that way.
For sure. One final, I guess, question from Matt. Assuming this is not too, I guess, confidential to share. What companies or type of companies have you seen doing innovation well in terms of, I guess, best practice?
Yeah. Look, it's a comment. You get this every single time, and I've got decks of companies that. So look, it's a hard one to answer, because the only way you can figure out is two ways. One, if companies are actually really writing about what they're doing, which a lot of companies don't. And we all know the companies that are doing innovation really well because they do write about it, right? They even make TV commercials about how well they're innovating. Or you've been able to work on a project and you're able to see firsthand these cultures. And probably even the third way is that, we actually consume products and apps, and we can actually see little micro updates come out all the time, and we can say, wow, that was a really exciting update because of this change, and I can see that probably someone saw that problem. So look, I'm not going to name names, like who does it really well. We all kind of know, the good companies, companies that I've worked with that have really good, who have really kind of, I guess, taken on board the full weight of innovation and system of innovation. Australian Super. They've gone well, into full hog. They've got a fully dedicated team to actually taking these 12 capabilities and actually engineering and re-engineering them to actually build this actual platform. So I can only speak for the companies that I work with, but look, every company is trying their best and doing their best. So one of the things that I say to companies and executives, like, go easy on yourself, right? It took Procter and Gamble like 13 years, or no, so it's like 20 something years to kind of change their organization, into an innovation culture. 13, like these are big numbers, right? So one of the things that I also say to, executives and boards is you got to play the long game. If you think it's a short game, then you're just going to burn through a lot of money and you're not going to have anything to show for it. You've got to play the long game. Okay. So you've got to plan for that 6, 8 to 10 year horizon from a capability perspective. And if you don't, then, it's a high risk strategy. Now, the problem with that future, that long-term horizon thinking is that during that period of time, there's a lot of transformation that happens in organizations. And here's one of the key things and interesting things that I saw when I was interviewing companies is that they had a lot of really great initiatives. They had idea channels, that they had, idea emails that you can send ideas to. They had a lot of really good things. But the problem is that they were set up in isolation of anything else. And these initiatives then ended up, closing down because they became an administrative burden or a nightmare, whatever. So, like, go easy on yourselves, and you're going to have you got to think long term. But if you're going to bring in a team, be really clear about what it is that you want to prove to yourself or the organization in the first 12 months. And it may not be to improve revenue. It may just be, hey, can we actually think of something, test something, prototype it, spin it in the market in a closed environment, and can we actually do that? Like, because probably that's the first thing that you probably need to learn how to do before thinking about, can we build a $10 million, additional revenue stream into the organization? And if you do want to have those types of numbers, then you're going to have to hire a crack team, to actually go and do that. But you need to kind of get out of their way. You need to prepare the organization, for this change to happen.
For sure. Well, look, Andrew, thanks again for your time. I think that's all the questions. Have you got anything else you kind of want to leave on that note?
Yeah, anyone that knows me that's watching, I could talk about this stuff for days and days. It's a very, very big topic. But yeah, I think just I want to say thank you to you, James, for bringing me on. It is a massive, massive topic. And there's a lot of great people out there trying to improve the innovation design community, and keep the conversations going, James, on Latitude Live.
Yeah, and it's clear. I think there's certainly a need for that kind of, I guess, a system of innovation to follow to ensure kind of, I guess, you see that successful change. And that, I guess, that's regardless of the size of the company, right? Whether you're small business, medium-sized business, or a large corporate. I think having a process and a system of innovation,
totally.
At least you can then see what's working and what's not working, then find out where, I guess, those 12 points, which one's failing.
Yeah, correct. And don't even think about scaling innovation before you've worked those out. If you scale too early, it's the same concept. Like innovation, is a product in itself, right? Like any other product you put into the market. Well, you don't try and scale a product from day one.
Sure.
You put it in the market, you've got to learn, and then you've got to grow, and then from growth, then you start to scale. So don't try and scale innovation before you've figured out how those capabilities need to exist and evolve inside of your organization.
Fantastic. Well, Andrew, look, thanks again for your time, and again, everyone that joined us on the webinar, I really appreciate your time today, and hopefully we will see you again. If you have any, I guess, further questions, please drop a message to either myself or Andrew, and I guess subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you on the next webinar. And I guess, look, one final note, for anyone that would like to have a conversation with Andrew, he's more than welcome to have a kind of half an hour conversation with you if this is something that you do want to explore. But yeah, look, thanks again for your time. Stay safe, enjoy the rest of your week, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Fantastic. Thanks everyone. Bye for now.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.